Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Before we get to this episode, I want to thank the following sponsors of the podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com, Cody Nelson, my friend of 20 plus years. He's the glassing guru. I call him the optics authority. He's the optics manager at GoHunt.com Gear Shop. Call Cody if you're interested in buying any optics at all. You can reach him directly for info and sales at 702-847-8747, that's extension 2, or you can email him directly at optics@gohunt.com. You can also send him a text or call him on his cell phone, 602-399-3699. Guys, I want to thank Cody and all of his work that he does with the J. Scott Outdoors podcast listeners. I also want to thank Go Hunt Insider. It's application season, guys. You're going to get a $50 Go Hunt Gear Shop gift card just for signing up. Go to gohunt.com/JScott. I also want to thank KUIU Ultralight Hunting. KUIU just released its new Velo pattern. Go to KUIU.com to find out more about KUIU products and the new Velo pattern. I also want to thank phonescope.com. Use the JScott20 promo code to get a 10% discount on all orders. Guys, let's get right to this episode. Guys, if you have any questions or comments for me, you can reach out on my email at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. You can also follow me on my Instagram account. That's jscottoutdoors. You can send me a direct message there. I love hearing and interacting with all of you listeners, and thank you for your avid support of this podcast. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we've got the Chief Hunting Officer and Director of Conservation at KUIU, Brendan Burns, on the line. Brendan, how you doing?
Doing well, Jay. How you doing today?
Good. I wanted to get you on and talk about this phenomenal project and this whole thing that you've got going with the Conservation Direct, and start from the beginning, talk about the concept and talk about how you were able to manage that concept all the way to fruition and then how it's going. So I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, great. It's been a while. Obviously, you and I have talked about this a couple of years now. I think you were one of the first people I told about it. But we in January, February this year, we did the first ever all company and customer funded sheep transplant ever done. And we basically moved, we took an excess of sheep on a reservation here in Montana and moved 55 sheep. We moved 30 sheep to North Dakota. And we moved 25 sheep to Antelope Island in Utah. It's a phenomenal project. It was just a really cool thing. We did it all. It was basically all privately funded, all privately taken care of. We did it in conjunction with the state of North Dakota, the 3 affiliates tribe in North Dakota, and with the state of Utah and Antelope Island State Park. We were able to, basically put 3 brand new herds of sheep on the planet in 2 days, all done. What makes it different is all done from the directed by the company. It was not a state project. It was not a conservation organization project. It was a project that I've been working on for quite a while. It was done with KUIU and KUIU customers to just a different take on how we could have a direct impact on the conservation front. There's a lot of talk about conservation, and there's a lot of things. We still support tons of organizations and all everything that we normally do. But a few years ago, I just kind of came up with the concept of it'd just be really cool to do something more to have a direct impact and to really just boots on the ground, kind of get your hands dirty and see if you could put something together that would actually make an impact and be able to put a new sheep herd on the planet. It was part of it was a personal goal of mine to see if we could pull it off. So it was a phenomenal project, and we were able to move them, and everything went incredibly successful. And anybody who wants to see the background of the project, anything, we have it up on the site. It's if you go to conservationdirect.com, or if you go to KUIU and look under conservation, it's all the films, all that stuff are up there of how it went down and everything.
Brendan, and we'll get to this, but as a result of the transplant, there were ewes that were transplanted that were pregnant, and out of the 55 sheep that have transplanted, I believe there's 30 extra sheep that have been born now. So now we're at 80-something sheep, correct?
Yeah, so it's really cool. So when we did full biological, so just a little background on the project. I mean, everything was handled like we hired the absolute best biologists in the world, did all the disease testing. This wasn't just bucket biology, so to speak, of a couple of guys getting together wanting to do their own transplant. I mean, we went through all the protocol that any transplant would be done. It was obviously directed by each state, had their own markers and testing that they needed done. These are actually some of the most tested sheep that have ever been moved in the history of the country, because we did it simultaneously over a course of 2 days. We moved 55 sheep to three different locations, but 2 different states. So as we were, we obviously moved, we took 30 sheep to the 3 affiliates tribe in North Dakota. And there were 25 ewes and 5 young rams. And of those 25 ewes, 21 of them were pregnant, which was really cool. And then of the on the Utah front, 13 of the 20, we took a few lambs. It was actually got difficult to catch sheep. They got pretty smart by the second day. 13 of the sheep were pregnant as well, and they've all had lambs at this point in time. And as of right now, I believe there's of the original 55 that were transplanted between the 2 locations, there's 87 sheep on the ground, which has just been phenomenal to see. It's just such a cool thing to go like, hey, we put this awesome thing together with these awesome people, all these volunteers, and now 3 months later to see the direct results of just a whole new sheep herd, and then firstborn lambs on the ground in their new habitat where they'll be living their life and hopefully propagating species going forward in different locations. So it's been really, really, really rewarding for sure.
And let's put this in perspective as well. This transplant to these 2 different states, the ultimate goal is down the road that they will be doing good enough that they will be a sustainable population that that hunters might have the chance to hunt, and or they will also be able to take sheep from there and move it to other places. So it's kind of just expanding North American sheep all over the country, right?
Yeah, so it's pretty unique. The tribe in North Dakota, it was perfect habitat, and they just didn't have any Rocky Mountain bighorns to put in there. So a couple of years ago, I reached out to Brett Wiedemann in North Dakota, who's their overall sheep biologist, and just said, hey, we have these excess sheep here in Montana, and I would like to, do you have a place for them? And I also reached out to Jace Taylor in Utah, and asked him, like, I've got these excess sheep. Are you interested in, can you take a transplant? And how this is different in the fact that it would be directed from the private sector, and not, hey, let's put a sheep transplant together. I basically reached out to them both, said, I have the sheep, they're paid for. We've got this whole project plan. Can you take the sheep? And at the time, so this started in 2017, at the time, Antelope Island was populated with California bighorns, and they could not take the sheep. They had a couple areas that weren't quite ready. And so that's why I moved on to North Dakota. Well, in the meantime, North Dakota, we planned a transplant in 2018 and early 19, and the timing just didn't work out. We had it all planned, and the helicopter had some maintenance problems, and it kind of got late, and they don't transplant sheep after the 1st of March. So we basically pushed it a year. Well, in the meantime, they had started seeing a die-off occur on Antelope Island, and it happened really quick. I think they saw the first coughing sheep in late November, and by the end of March in 2019, all the sheep on Antelope Island were gone. They had depopulated it. So at that point in time, we had missed a year to do the transplant. We were going to take 34, and Antelope Island had died off. And so the simultaneous transplant came around. I just thought, well, we can do both. And so after spring counts showed that out of those 34 ewes that we were going to take, all had lambs, and all the other ewes in the herd had also had lambs. So like we went from a population a little over 130 to almost 200 overnight. So we had extra sheep to do. So we after doing a count, we decided, hey, we can do both, and we're going to do it simultaneously. And so the sheep on Antelope Island is a nursery herd. Now they're going to have one of the things that when we went about doing this project is there were only 2 asks, and I'm going to kind of ramble on here for a second because I want to make something clear. So this was fully funded, staffed, and paid for by KUIU and KUIU customers, but we didn't own the sheep. So how it works is like we bought the sheep, we gave the sheep away. This was a gift to the hunters in North America. We want to do an actual conservation project that is just going to put sheep out there. We're going to do good, and there's nothing in return. Like, I don't have any connection to these sheep at this point in time. Once they went out and jumped out of the trailer, they are owned by where they went. So there was two things that we insisted upon, and that I made it super clear to begin with. One, it had to go to a huntable population, meaning I'm not really interested in raising the sheep population somewhere where it's not going to create a new hunting opportunity or sustain an existing hunting opportunity. Like, there's a lot of conservation projects, and those are all great, but the sole focus of this is hunting related conservation. Like, it's going to create a new hunting opportunity, preserve a hunting opportunity. Like, that's the whole conservation direct model. Like, there's a lot of things you can do, but this is focused totally on hunting. The other thing was that obviously it had to go to a population that would be hunted. So in North Dakota, they're going to have an auction tag and a draw tag. They're managed by the state of North Dakota on a private tribal land, which is the 3 affiliate tribes. And then in Utah, they are owned by the state of Utah, the Sportsmen of Utah. They are managed by the state of Utah, and they live in Antelope Island State Park. But Antelope Island State Park does allow hunting, and the sheep on Antelope Island are now their Rocky Mountain Bighorn nursery herd. So from that population of 25 that we put on there, which now there are there's 40 something sheep on there now. They will once it reach sustainable population, they will obviously offer hunting as well, 1 or 2 tags a year, I believe 2, but more importantly, they're going to take those excess sheep. Like, all those sheep, once they hit population, are going to start to transplant out. So the original 25 will result in, basically all the new populations going forward for the state of Utah. So it's a really it's a very thought out project in the fact that it's going to be a nursery herd, and there is going to offer hunting opportunities, including those hunting opportunities that come about when 10 years down the road the population reaches full objective and they start moving the bighorns off of Antelope Island to new hunting units in the state of Utah. And the same with North Dakota. We took 30 sheep, 15 and 15, 3 rams on one side, two rams on the other, and 10 and the ewes and 12 and 13 ewes. And so they're on the north side and the south side of the Little Missouri River. And so now there's 2 separate populations in North Dakota. So those will be the same thing. Once they reach objective, they're going to use those to transplant to new habitat. And it's really cool. Like, obviously, I think a lot of people know about Antelope Island. It's a state park. You can go out there and look at it. It's very cool. But in North Dakota, they went to very similar terrain like the Missouri Breaks here in Montana. So, ultimately it's going to create hunting opportunities in 2 ways. One, they will actually hunt those populations themselves, and then as nursery herds, they will transplant and do as they see fit with them. But that's one of the things they're under full, and they have a really great management plan for them. So I think it's going to be really, really successful.
So this is way more than 55 sheep. This is probably going to turn into thousands of sheep over time. And one of the questions I have is, in other transplants that states do and other organizations and what have you, how is conservation direct different from some of the other transplants?
So the main difference is that this was directed by the company. I happen to be in a place where I was aware of this project could be put to place. I've had it in my mind for a long time, and came up with the concept with a few other guys, and just thought, man, this would be incredible to do. The main difference that it's fully funded and paid for. It's financially totally transparent. It's fully funded and paid for by the private sector. And we worked in conjunction with 2 different tribal organizations and 2 different states. And then it is solely focused on moving these sheep. There was nobody's salary got paid. Nobody, like, at the end of the day, we just did the project. This whole thing was just about knocking out a project. I found this incredible project, found a place to put the sheep. There was nothing to be gained from it. Like, I literally called Brett Wiedemann and Jace Taylor and said the same thing. Can you take the sheep? They are fully paid for. We want to pay for all the disease testing. We want to pay for transportation. We want to pay for, I had 34 amazing people showed up to help out with the transplant. We paid for the hotel rooms. Like, everything that was needed to take care of the actual transplant is what was taken care of. Nothing more, nothing less. The financial transparency came from the Midwest Wild Sheep Foundation, which is where obviously these sheep occur in North Dakota. Before Antelope Island had a die-off, Mike Boughton had reached out and said he wanted to help out in the project. And I said, well, that's great. here's how we can do it. They're a 501c3. Midwest Wild Sheep Foundation acted as the bank. So when we put the money in as KUIU, and I reached out to, there were 16 donors. I made 16 phone calls in this project and raised all the money for the project. KUIU put in half, and these other customers put in half. All the money went to the Midwest Wild Sheep Foundation. They handled the money basically. So there was no, I'm not going to say shenanigans, but it's just totally financially transparent. It went through a 501c3. Midwest Wild Sheep Foundation handled all the money. There was nothing more paid that needed to be done with the transplant, and nothing less. Like, we just took care of the whole project. So just the transparency on it. I mean, there's a lot of organizations doing great work. I just wanted to, like a lot of people want to know exactly where their money went. I called, 16 of these great people, and they were just like, wow, absolutely. Like it was, I didn't know how the money raising would go. I've never done that before, but everybody just said basically, how much, where do I send it? Like to actual, like, what became very obvious is people want to see, hey, where's my money going? And this one, it's like, hey, you're going to, your name's going to be written on the inside of a collar. There's actually sheep, these 55 sheep. We are going to actually move them. Here's the date. Here's when it's coming. And it was just an incredible response from the company, from the financial, the donors, which were all KUIU customers, and from, like from everything, like for all the people that showed up. It was just an incredible experience. And I think you were actually scheduled to come, and it kind of overlapped with some Coues deer hunting. I think you were out of the country, but you were coming as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's such an exciting project. Brendan, out of the 16 customers that you called, did anyone say no?
Didn't have a single person say no. I didn't have to call anybody else. Like, once we hit the target amount, I didn't have anybody say no. It was pretty incredible. It was pretty incredible just to, if you have a crazy idea, and to have, all these people are my friends as well, to just have them go like, yeah, how much, where do I send it? Like, that's an amazing idea. Let's see if we can pull it off. And then, same deal with the volunteers. Nobody knew about this project. There was 5 of us that knew about it, 5 or 6 of us that knew about it, for the 2 years it took to put it together. But I literally called, all these people with about 5 days beforehand and said, hey, can you show up? This is when it's going down. And they all showed up, and it was just an amazing gathering. And like I said, if you want to see how the whole deal went down, go to conservationdirect.com, and you can see, it kind of, there's a deep dive into, the overall project, the concept of Conservation Direct, which is, really just like direct company conservation. And then a deep dive into each transplant, where they're going, the habitat, what we accomplished in each of those 3 transplants, really, because there's 2 in North Dakota and 1 in Utah. So, it was just, the response has been amazing. And the people afterwards now, like right now, obviously this is not a concept that's one and done. This is, we're moving on to do something else. I'm working on some really amazing things right now that I think are going to come to fruition, and the outreach of people saying, hey, man, I want to be a part of the next thing you do has been overwhelming.
That was exactly what my next question was. I know out of the 16 that you called, there's hundreds, and if not thousands, that would be interested in doing the same thing. So for people out there that are interested in wanting to move on future projects and be a part of the next Conservation Direct program or project or, transplant, what should they do?
Yeah, if you go to conservationdirect.com or go to KUIU.com and go to our conservation page, there's a sign-up place there where it says I'd be interested in volunteering or being a financial donor or volunteering. I mean, they're both equally important. Like I said, the financial donors, it was incredible that they all responded that way, and also the people that showed up. I mean, so the next, I'm going to be a little bit vague. The next, I'm working on some other stuff, and I'm really just not going to let anybody know what it is right now until we get all the details worked out. These things take a long time. Like I said, I started working on this project in early 2017, really came up with the idea. So they don't happen overnight. And even with conservation organizations, like all the other people, there's still some great work. There's some great work being done elsewhere. They just don't happen overnight. But if you go to conservationdirect.com, you can sign up and say, I'd love to, either be a volunteer or be a financial donor, and both of those things. And again, it's going to operate the same way. Like, Conservation Direct is not an organization. It's just organized action. Our whole thing is, we're just going to pick a project and get the project funded, no more, no less, knock out the project and move on to the next one. I mean, it's really just, company-based conservation that's just doing a few projects, and like we're not stopping supporting the organizations that we always do. We just feel like it's just a really cool thing to do more, and the connection with the customers and with friends and just people that can show up. And it was like the ultimate, and I don't know if you even put it team building, but just like to see all these people show up and have a direct impact was it was incredible. And to see those sheep jump out of the trailer, knowing that took some initiative. It took a lot of hard work, but we got this thing done, and there are 3 new sheep herds on the planet based on, this incredible group of people and a pretty fresh idea. So it's just, it's been an amazing thing to be a part of.
Brendan, do you think that there is a desire, or that people feel like some of the conservation organizations out there maybe have lost a little bit of focus as to, actually putting money directly into the wildlife, and, maybe too much has gone into advertising, too much has gone into, maybe connecting themselves with certain companies and trying to, in essence, they've just created a big corporation. Where do you think there's a yearning, and from the people that you've talked to and the feedback that you've heard after it, that just having the ability to just say, here's my dollars, and boom, they're on the inside of a collar of a sheep, and that's all I care about. I just want to go from point A to point B. I don't care about any of the other stuff in between. I just want it to be, I want to see my money go to good work. And I'm not pointing fingers at any other conservation organization, but I'm saying that do you believe that there is a little bit of a yearning for people out there to want to make sure that their money goes directly on the ground?
I do. I think it just involves clarity. There are some things that require money and require energy that are not glamorous. I mean, there's lobbying and stuff for wildlife that definitely takes money, and it's one of those things. Like, there has to be money raised for a lot of different things that are very, very important. I mean, this was a pretty glamorous one. I mean, hey, we got to go grab and test and vaccinate and move sheep. Like, this is a pretty sexy project, to be honest with you. But I think people just want clarity. Like, there's advertising and PR. There's people, there's credit taken for stuff that's not really happening. Like, what is conservation? Is buying an ad conservation? I don't think so. Is making a film about something that somebody else is doing conservation? It raises awareness, but it's not actually conservation. You're not making a difference. I mean, I think everybody's pretty aware on the conservation front right now, and like I said, this is just something that we're going to do. I'm not sure everybody's going to be able to, take on this model, but I challenge any company. Like, I think they should. I mean, I hope somebody comes to the plate with a massive project and checkmate. This one's even bigger. This is great. Like, at the end of the day, it's going to be great for wildlife and for hunting opportunities. So I think people, from what I've gotten feedback, which has been tremendous, is that people just want clarity. They want to know where their money is going. They want to know, they want the separation of, this is advertising, this is PR, this is, all these things. I mean, everybody loves going to banquets and I'll say this, what this really highlighted for me, there's some small organizations, some small banquet type stuff. Like, I mean, Travis Jensen at Utah Wild Sheep Foundation was super instrumental in this whole project. I mean, him and I, he was originally who I'd reached out to, and they were tremendous help to us on that. And same with Midwest Wild Sheep. Obviously, they acted as the bank in this thing. Everybody from North Dakota and Minnesota, those guys, they don't even have sheep out in their area, and they were just absolutely willing to do whatever it takes. I think there's a lot of focus out there that people want to help. And so I think if the projects are just clarified, and again, there's some stuff that's not as glamorous. There's, there's lobbying that needs to be done for habitat. There's habitat improvement projects and all this stuff. Like, everything we're going to do is not going to be as glamorous as moving sheep. Like, this is a pretty incredible project, but I do think people want to see and know where their money is going. And and that's just what we're going to do. We're going to continue to support great organizations. I mean, last year, there's, like I said, there's a lot of great people doing great things. I mean, they moved more sheep in Utah than just about anywhere, or than anywhere in North America last year. And this project that we put together was just one of the many projects that they did. So there's a lot of good work being done, and this just highlights what we were able to do on this one, but there's a lot of tremendous work being done. There's also a lot of stuff that really doesn't fall under the conservation realm, and I think that'll get sorted out. But I definitely have seen the response that people, they want to see where their money's going,
Got a quick question about the genetics of the sheep that were transplanted as far as Rocky Mountain Bighorns genetically. What kind of horn configuration, size, bases? I mean, do the people of Utah and the people of North Dakota have a lot to look forward to as far as big, healthy, beautiful sheep, big, full curled sheep? What are the genetics like?
Yeah, this was a huge genetic upgrade for both. So North Dakota has traditionally had California Bighorns, which I don't believe their state record has ever broke 180, and I think they're probably a few years away from that thing's going to be dusted pretty quickly, given these genetics. And Utah had California Bighorns as well on Antelope Island, which I don't know what the biggest sheep ever killed on Antelope Island was before, but this was a massive genetic upgrade for Antelope Island. So the sheep originally we transplanted from a reservation called Rocky Boys in northern Montana, and they originally came from western Montana on the Flathead Indian Reservation. So this is really conservation at its best. I mean, these sheep were originally transplanted, 23 of them in 2008. And, in 2020, we took 55 off and created 3 new herds. But the genetics came from western Montana, an area that had produced up to 200-inch rams in the past, where the original genetics came from. If anybody is familiar with Montana, like Perma and Thompson Falls and that area was the absolute hotspot of big sheep in the mid to late 90s. And then up into the early 2000s. So the genetics are tremendous. There's several different genetics as far as on the reservation. There's big based open curl and super twisty, awesome looking rams. They're Booney and Crockett caliber genetics for sure. They're like I said, both places have probably the best genetics in their state at this point in time. And time will tell. We took a beautiful, when you transplant sheep, you don't take big rams or mature rams because they tend to wander. They don't mix well with the group of ewes. So we took all 10 rams that came off the reservation were between 1 and 2 year olds. And then we took 1 3-year-old to North Dakota and 1 3-year-old to Utah. And the one that went to Utah, for example, he's 3.5 years old. He would be 4 years old about right now. And pretty unique opportunity to put your hands on one, but when we swung him in, it was like, just go pick out a really nice 3-year-old. Let's put a decent one, and we have a really high population, a good population of rams on the reservation. So it was just like, let's just get one older age class ram with good genetics, and we grabbed a sheep that has a little over 15-inch bases at 3.5 years old. He was 30 inches long, so he's got ear tag number 4 on him. He's on Antelope Island, and I'm assuming 6-7 years down the road, 5-6 years down the road, that is going to be a giant sheep. It'll be interesting to watch him. So the genetics are good, and like I said, they're the other thing about the genetics that people don't understand, or it's interesting to, like, it's only half the equation. The rams, these are really good ewes, super healthy, some of the most disease free. They are and in fact, I just talked to Brett Wiedemann yesterday, and after going through the entire disease profile, these are some of the cleanest sheep disease-wise that have ever been transplanted anywhere in North America. They are absolutely clean as a whistle, which is ultimately, when you talk about Pasteurella and some of the Emovii and some of these diseases that affect sheep, you want to have clean sheep that are going to, have a great run. And so I think, all things considered, it's been a huge upgrade for both states.
Fantastic, man. Well, my hat's off to you for coming up with the concept, and I think Conservation Direct, what an incredible model. And like you said, it would be fantastic if a bunch of people get involved, but it would be even more fantastic as well as if other companies will step up, and you'd be the first one to go shake their hand and say, job well done, if they answer the call and be able to direct something like this. And what a great deal for all of us as sportsmen, and what a great deal for the animals that we love.
I think it kind of falls into both. I mean, like, these, sportsmen's organizations, conservation organizations continue to need support. They're doing, the ones that are doing great work, and if they're not doing great work, they shouldn't be. And on the other hand too, it gives a way for people to have a direct result in what they're putting into it. One other cool thing, the last sheep we caught in the whole transplant, they went out and like I said, they got pretty spooky. I mean, you helicopter 55 sheep. They were just fully timbered up, and we had plenty of sheep, but they were just got hard to find. The last ewe they grabbed on the reservation was pretty interesting. They brought her in, and I was at a different table, and I kind of know all these sheep really well. But I came back over, and she had an ear tag number 18 in her ear, and it was actually an original transplant from Western Montana. So she was 2 years old, was brought in 2008 to the reservation as a 2-year-old, lived her entire life on the reservation, and then it was the last one we caught, and they had already processed her. She had a new ear tag. Ironically, it was the same number, 18, and took her down. So this ewe is definitely minimum of 14 and a half years old when we caught her, and she was pregnant, which just goes to show, like, when you think about, wow, that here's this ewe that was born in Western Montana, lived its whole life in Central Montana, is now on its way to Utah, and Jace told me, like, she had a awesome little lamb, sent me some video over the other day, like that's a 15-year-old ewe that has probably, since she was transplanted originally, produced 10 to 12 of those ewes that are on the reservation came from her, and now she's another one on Antelope Island. So it just goes to show, like, how impactful one super healthy sheep can be. I mean, that's a ewe that's produced basically a small herd in her lifetime.
That's awesome. Absolutely fantastic. Well, again, hats off to you for coming up with the concept and pushing it through, and I can't wait to see the next project that you guys do. And I know anybody out there listening, if you want to get involved, make sure you go to Conservation Direct, go to KUIU.com, get involved, and your help will be appreciated, both volunteer and your money. So it's fantastic. Brendan, while I've got you on the phone, we had a few KUIU customer questions about some of the gear. One of them is the new boots that KUIU has came out with. Can you tell us how they differ from the original KUIU boots, the Rebel K and the R Evolution boots, and what upgrades, if any, have been done?
So it's a really exciting project. Been 2 years in development with these with Scarpa, and it's been an awesome project. So we have two basically. One is an upgrade and one is a totally new boot. And basically two are the same boot with some upgrades, and then one is an entirely new boot. There's the R Evolution, which has changed colorway, and all these boots now have what's called H-Dry, which is a bonded waterproof membrane to the outside of the boot. So in traditional boot construction, there's a hanging bootie, which is basically like a hanging sock inside of a boot, which keeps your foot dry. And there's some space in between the outside of the boot and that bootie, which can hold water and make them difficult to dry. And what H-Dry is a laminated bonded membrane to the outside of the boot. So the outer, like before you get to the outside of the boot, the outermost part is now where the waterproof membrane occurs. So it just makes the boot more waterproof. So all three of them feature the new H-Dry. The R Evolution has a new colorway. It's got our logo. It's got the KUIU logo on the rand, and it's basically the same boot that we've had. Super easy to break in, just a real great Western hunting boot. Had a lot of success with that, and it's been really great. So the new boot, which has a different name, but so the new one is the Rebel K8, and it's got. We made a few changes to it. It's got H-Dry in it. It's the same as the Rebel K with a few upgrades that we felt are going to make this boot better. It's got a new rubber. It's got a rubber rand that goes all the way around, and then it's got a hybrid poly rand on the back, which is going to makes it look a little cleaner, and it saves a little bit of weight, makes it a little more durable in the back. It's got a new toe bumper on it, which is going to add to the durability. It's going to make the boot last longer. It was one of the things we ran into on the original was wearing out a little bit in the toe. So we've added a large toe bumper to add some more tread to it. And it's basically the same boot as the Rebel K has always been. It's now gray and black. It's got our logo on it. The only place you can get this boot is at KUIU. Like this is a collaboration with Scarpa. I'm super happy with this boot. I have personally worn this boot since about 2015. We started development. I don't think you could build a better sheep hunting boot. It's uninsulated. It's a very specific boot. It's got a 3/4 shank. It's a perfect sheep hunting boot, in my opinion. Now, again, take that for what it's worth. I helped design it. I love the boot. So that's what the new Rebel K8 is. And then we have go ahead.
And that's an 8-inch boot, correct?
It's 8 inches tall. Yeah, okay. Correct. The 8 and that's what the height. Yep. Right. And the new boot we have now, the brand new collaboration boot is called the Rebel K10 Insulated HD. So it's got H dry. It's our first 10-inch boot. Now the 10-inch boot is basically synonymous with the hunting boot. It's going to be 2 inches taller than the Rebel K8, and this is our first foray into an insulated boot. It's got Scarpa sock fit. I've worn this boot now for a year and a half. I put it through the paces. I think people are really going to love this boot. It's got 200 grams of Primaloft Gold insulation, so it's our first insulated boot. And then we picked that amount because it's kind of the perfect amount for being active. In reality, like when it gets cold, when you're hiking, glassing, moving, hunting, later type season, your feet aren't going to get overheated, but it is nice to have a little bit of insulation. It's got Scarpa sock fit. This is the first 10-inch tall Scarpa sock fit boot that they've ever done. So, if you haven't worn Scarpa sock fit, you really owe yourself to at least try it on. It basically eliminates the tongue, so you get a more consistent fit. Every time you slide this boot on, it fits the exact same way. You don't have the tongue going side to side. These are fully synthetic boots. They dry extremely quickly. I've kind of converted everything to synthetic just in the fact that it doesn't change shape. And when I say, consistent fit, I think everybody's taken a traditional leather boot, and by the end of a 10-day hunt or a long hunt, your eye laces are touching. They just change sizes on you, which you don't run into with a fully synthetic boot. Again, this has got, just like the Rebel K8, it's got a bigger toe bumper now. It's got this hybrid rubber poly rand. It's got the KUIU logo on the back, which looks super slick. It's black and gray colorway. And it's just a really simple. It's just a really great mountain boot. Similar sizing. They size it up slightly to make sure for the insulation. I found it fits identical to the Rebel K. So those are. I don't know if you got any specific questions, but I'm pretty excited about that boot. Like I said, I've personally worn them. I don't know how many miles I got on, but a lot. And really, really excited about both those boots. All three of them running.
One question I have is the Rebel K10. Give me where that boot would be used for most people.
So the Rebel K8 for me is my sheep hunting boot. Summertime, July 15th through mid-September, all the way up north. Sheep hunting, later season. In the southern place, anywhere you like. I don't like an insulated boot on a sheep hunt. You're moving tons of country. Insulation just holds water for me until it gets really cold. Now the Rebel K10, like for example, in my hunting year, I start wearing it about October 1st. You're going to get some cold mornings. You're going to be getting some snow. I took it on a spring grizzly hunt last year where weather it was actually pretty good weather, but it did get it did get cold. It's not enough insulation to where you couldn't take it on an early season hunt. And some guys, a lot of times people run differently as far like my feet run hot. So I tend to not like an insulated boot, but there's a lot of guys that they're always cold. Their feet are always cold. It'd be the Rebel K10 would be a great one. If you consistently are just like, man, my toes are always cold, be a great boot for you. And then it's 2 inches taller for stream crossings, and just it's your traditional, what you think of when you look at a hunting boot with a tall upper, 10 inches tall. That's what the Rebel K10 is. It's your traditional looking hunting boot. This one is just fully synthetic and a little bit just more specific design.
Brendan, your elk hunting boot, do you run the Rebel K8 or do you run the R Evolution?
I prefer a stiff boot. I have hunted in the Revolution. I pretty much wear the Rebel K 8 or 10 all the time, but again, I prefer a really stiff boot. And if I'm not running those, I'm wearing running shoes. Like a lot of times when I'm hunting elk, I'll wear running shoes, something super light with a scree grater, especially if I'm, whether it's eastern Montana or super hot areas. Like I've probably killed as many bulls wearing running shoes as I have boots, but it depends on the terrain. I mean, I don't hunt a lot of super nasty mountain terrain. It's more, big, wide open places. And, so.
Talk about you mentioned it a little bit, but for those people out there listening, why you think it's so important to have a synthetic boot versus a leather boot? Because, leather boots have been, the historical boot that everyone has worn, but talk about why a synthetic boot, in your opinion, is just that much better.
Really, there are two things that make a synthetic boot superior for most things. One is consistency of fit. So synthetics don't stretch like leather. They just don't move like leather. There's some great things about leather. I will tell you that a leather boot in the nasty desert with a ton of cactus and stuff, like you're in South Texas or going to Mexico and it's tons of a leather boot is superior in that kind of terrain because it doesn't get penetrated. One thing about synthetics is they're woven together and they're pieced, like they don't stop cactus as well as a leather boot. So I would say that if you're in tons of cactus and stuff, spiny stuff, like a synthetic boot is not nearly as good. You're gonna, eventually it's not going to hold water because it's going to get poked through. Where a synthetic boot is far superior is most of the sheep hunting I do up north or up here. It's consistency of fit and quick drying. Leather holds water. It's hard to dry out. Everybody's had a leather boot that gets wet. You set it next to the fire. It changes sizes. You can't get it on. It doesn't dry out fast enough. Like there are some things about leather that are not ideal. And again, it comes down to your foot too. Like this is not going to be the ultimate boot for everyone. It's just going to be, it's really good if this boot fits your foot. Like 50% of the equation is how the boot fits your foot. But for me, the consistency of fit and quick drying make I basically have switched to, unless I'm in the nasty desert, I have switched to synthetic boots across the board because of how fast they dry. They do not absorb water the same as a leather boot, and they fit the same every single time. They dry out super fast and then they fit the same. Like one of the things. I mean, I can't tell you how many hunts I've been on with leather boots where by the end of it, all my eyelets are touching. My boot feels like I'm slogging in it, like it just hasn't gotten dry, and basically the boot size has changed because leather naturally stretches. So.
All right, good stuff there. Another question here: how much should you tip your guide on a hunt? What would you say?
Yeah, at least 10%, at least. I'm an over tipper, but, I guided for a long time. And one thing, you want to give your guide cash, money, whatever that is to you. Guys don't need gear. As much as it's great, it's pretty hard to put binoculars and rain gear in the bank or pay a mortgage with it. So the more the better, at least 10%. Obviously it depends on the hunt. Having guided as an actual profession for a long time, you're not getting rich doing it. Like,
right.
So you want to be overly generous, and it also depends on how hard they work. I mean, if you have a horrible hunt and somebody doesn't work hard and they're not great, like that's a different story. But you have somebody that's busted their ass. He had a great hunt. Like, yeah, you want to reward them. I mean, I always say, guys, like, if you're booking a hunt and you can't afford to tip, you can't afford to go on the hunt. Right. I mean, it's essential. I mean, there's nothing worse than somebody that doesn't tip. You get a bad reputation. People don't want to take you again. I mean, if you can't afford to tip, you need to save a little more to go on the hunt. I would say, like, just be super generous. That those guys work. They're the hardest working people. And again, it's pretty hard to put gear or something else in the bank. I mean, that's what they do for a whole year. They make their whole year based on 4 to 5 months or 3 to 4 months, or some of them 2 months. So as much as you can, especially if they do a great job, like I said, you want to make sure they're rewarded, because they're not making a pile of money from an outfitter or they work for tips for sure.
Right. And I would also throw out too, I mean, on some of the guided hunts that I've gone on, I'm also a guide myself, but some of the biggest tips I've given are some of the hunts where maybe we weren't even successful and we didn't come home and harvest, but the guide worked his butt off. I think a lot of times guys will base their tip based on the size of animal, and I just, sometimes it just doesn't work out where you harvest an animal or you harvest the animal that maybe you wanted. Maybe, you got weathered out. But if your guide is working hard, 10% for me is absolute bottom floor minimum.
Yep.
Even up to 20 to 25%. It's one of those things that, being a guide myself, it's just one of those things that if you work your butt off and someone gives you a good tip, there's nothing more rewarding than someone, acknowledging your work and how hard you tried, regardless of the outcome. But if the guide is just doing everything that he possibly can to make you have a good hunt, that should be rewarded. And one of the things that always blows my mind is how everything that we do, you go to a restaurant, you get a tip, you play golf and you get your clubs washed, you give a tip. You go to a valet, you give a tip. How someone would think that they go on a guided hunt and don't tip is mind-blowing, but it's a reality. I know every year people and guides that tell me, hey, he didn't give a tip at all. And I think there just needs to be some awareness out there that, 10% is the minimum.
Yeah, no, and that's what I'm talking minimum. I am far above that on everything I do, and including, I bring a stack of hundreds for, if you find yourself in camp and there's a cook there that's making your food, you absolutely tip that person. Then, that's what they work for. A good firm handshake and a nice thank you does not go as far as a nice stack of cash. And then trust me, it's just as much as you possibly can. I have an interesting story. My first sheep hunt in 2008, which I got on a kind of a weird cancellation deal. I left my guide with more than I had going home in the bank. It was the Heidemann. He lives in Arizona, phenomenal guy, and worked his ass off. The only reason I got a sheep was because I killed it on day 13 of a 10-day hunt. And I left him with more money than I had going home at the time. So, the more you can do, those are the guys that really make it happen for you. The outfitter, he gets paid based on the hunt. And, some of it depends too. If you're on a $50,000 stone sheep hunt, I'd look at it, and leave the guy $5,000. If you're on some of the hunt, if you go on a hunt and it's not that expensive, leave them 25%. Go just, it's if they work hard, it's based on effort. You want to be an over tipper. That's if the worst thing somebody says about you after you come on a hunt is, man, that guy tips too much. I don't think anybody's going to be afraid to have that said about them. So just really take care of those guys, and they're, like I said, they work hard. I have yet to go on I have never had a terrible guide ever. Some of my best friends on the planet are people that we've hunted together, didn't know each other, and they've become lifelong friends. So it's very important. Can't emphasize it enough.
Got another question here. Info on thermals and reading wind in the mountains. I don't really know of any formal written stuff. What do you think, Brendan?
Yeah, man, keep the wind in your face. I don't know. There's a lot of rules of thumb. I hunt in a lot of places that have, again, whether it's, wind coming up or going down in the morning or and dropping in the evening, they're all rules of thumb, but nothing is set in stone. You have to, I always have a wind indicator with me and, all that kind of stuff, really swirly wind, even, consistent, a heavy, consistent wind is, you can't ask for anything more than that, or really, really swirly wind that's not that consistent is probably one of the biggest nightmares you can be hunting in. Wind is the number one for me, though. As far as, an animal can see you and they'll question their eyes. An animal can hear you and they'll question their ears. If an animal smells you, it's over. One of the things, it is absolutely the number one. Camouflage, being sneaky, all that other kind of stuff doesn't count. If you got the wind at your back and they get a whiff of you, that's a 100% positive identification, and they don't question that. When they get a sniff of somebody, they're gone.
Brendan, we got a couple other questions Here, one just says sun hat. The other one says, will we ever see a KUIU Booney sun hat? Sun hat wanted.
It's been passed on to the development team. I'm not a big sun hat guy. Everybody's seen I don't even hardly wear a hat ever.
I think we need to do the J. Scott designed sun hat and make it just look big and obnoxious, like one that I wear if I'm fishing.
One of those massive sombreros.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, you design it. I will send it over to the development team. I have said, like, hey, we've got a lot of requests for a big, gigantic
obnoxious hat. Just don't take photos in it.
If you want to build a sun hat like that hat that Lloyd Christmas is wearing in Dumb and Dumber, like, send it on over, like, just the essentials. Let's bring that thing out. So,
yeah, baby.
And obviously, so I have passed that on to the development team that we've gotten a lot of requests for that, but it takes a little time, and I'm sure they're trying to make it cool too, which is, kind of might be a little bit tough.
Kind of hard. Let's just face it, it's tough.
Yeah.
Got a question here. Will KUIU consider S and T in other pants besides attack? What is S and T? Small and tall? Short and tall?
Oh, small and tall. Yes, that will be considered. I don't have any time frame or all that stuff. Like, it's all based on sales. If the talls and the smalls, I know we're trying to extend everything down 30s and smalls and all that stuff. Like, that's all. It just takes time to implement all this stuff. But yeah, that's always that doesn't fall in my realm. But I can tell you, like, if there's enough people that want to buy something, we want to sell something. So yeah, it's all based on demand, and I believe that the tall demand has been very good. So
okay, how much are 15 power binoculars used for stone sheep hunting in British Columbia?
So it's funny. I've taken 15s on a stone sheep. So my personal optics now are, you always have to have a spotting scope. At least somebody's got to have one. So I take a large spotting scope, and I am hand carrying 12s now. I have found 15s. I believe glassing with 15s off a tripod is probably the most effective way to pick up game. The problem is 15s are just too much to handle. And I'm talking from my personal point of view, from lots of different stone sheep hunts, all sheep hunts. Like, I hand carry 12s, which I can both glass off of a tripod. I have a tripod adapter on it, and it's a lot of power. And I also can manage them with my handheld. 15s are too much for me. There are guys, I mean, in Mexico, I know a guy that he handholds 18s and does it well. I mean, the guy, there's no way you can spot a sheep before this guy. So it depends on what you like personally. I've found 12s to be the perfect mix for me. But I would say 10s or 12s off a tripod is far more effective than 15s on a stone sheep hunt, just because, if you're going to take 15s, that means you're taking three pieces of optics. Cause it's just, I don't know, Jay, you can answer that too. Like, I just don't find them to be able to be handheld.
Yeah, I think 15s are probably a little much. I think you ended up taking too much optics, too much weight. I would probably 10s or 12s are fine. Definitely have a spotting scope though.
My last 4 hunts, I've taken the Swarovski 12. I think they're the SLC's 12s. No, they're the EL.
Yeah, 1250 ELs is what you've been taking.
1250 ELs, yeah, and that's turned into my favorite glass to chest carry, and I have and I can glass off of a tripod, and 12s off a tripod are just as effective as 15s or darn close, considering I can basically eliminate a whole pair of binoculars doing it. So that's what I would suggest, 10s or 12s.
Brendan, the last time we talked, we were talking about the new Velo. How has the reception been on Velo?
It's been great. Yeah. Like a lot of positive feedback. It's just a really good pattern. It's a great field pattern. It's different than what we've had with Vias and Verde, and it just fills in one of the missing concealment times that you need. It's that lighter pattern with less contrast, and it's very effective in the field, and I think the reception's been pretty incredible. So I think almost everything that we make is now in stock in Velo, so it's been great, and again, it's just cool to see. We got some field photos coming in, some guys killing some stuff with Velo, and it's been really cool to see. And it was an awesome project to take from. It's not that often you can start with nothing and end up with a whole new camo pattern. It was a really fun project.
Brendan, one last question here, and then I'll let you go. I know we're sitting here around the 1st of June, and everything up north with the Canadian hunts is pretty up in the air, but it's not looking great for a lot of these sheep hunts. What are you hearing out there?
I've tried to stay in the loop, but I'm not a great source of information, more so than anybody else right now. I mean, I know it's currently not open. I'm staying positive. I've got a hunt that I'm really hoping to do up in the Yukon, but I just don't know. I mean, I don't know that anybody knows right now. Just kind of staying more hopeful. There's some good signs. I mean, my buddies are up hunting in Alaska right now. Alaska is now opened up. You can quarantine the field. There's some protocol that you have to go through, but the good thing is, I think Alaska is getting through this, and it's just going to depend on the plan. I don't know right now between British Columbia, the Yukon, and NWT what the final is, and I don't even want to speculate on it. I don't want anybody to quote me on it because I really am not in the know. Everybody has an opinion. I haven't seen a formal plan yet. I'm just, I'm really hoping, there's a lot of great people up there that's their livelihood. I hope that the government comes to their senses and puts together a plan in place that, basically, eliminates, it's just one of those bigger issues. It has nothing to do with hunting. It has everything to do with getting guys in the field. It's based in fear and things that are political. And so I'm hoping that they all come to their senses and realize that the risk factor with guys going to all sheep hunting and stone sheep hunting is so low that, we got to get on with life here. But that's again, just my personal opinion. So I wish I had some more news or it was just open, but I don't really know what's going to happen. So I believe Alaska will be fully open. So if you got to hunt in Alaska, it looks really good up there, but the other stuff, I just hope, cooler heads prevail and they put a real good plan together to keep everybody, if safety is what they're worried about or protocol with the COVID thing is something that's a massive concern with locals and stuff. They just put some stuff in place. And I believe, hunting is one of the greatest social distancing sports on the planet. So I really hope it comes around.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on today. Thanks for sharing about Conservation Direct and the success of the project that you've had. I look forward to seeing what you guys do in the future. And KUIU is always at the forefront of this stuff, and it's just a fantastic opportunity for customers to get involved. And just my hat's off to you guys for doing that. Guys that are listening, make sure to go to KUIU.com. That's KUIU.com. Direct-to-consumer model. You can order anything that you've heard about on the podcast right there at KUIU.com. Brendan, it's always great having you. Chief Hunting Officer and Director of Conservation at KUIU. Thanks for coming on here and sharing with us.
Well, thanks, Jay. And yeah, like I said, anybody if you want to hear more about the project or see more, just get a deep dive into it, go to conservationdirect.com or KUIU on our conservation page and check it out. And yeah, thanks, Jay. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, buddy. Take care.